Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Vipul. I work with CI. We provide advisory and investment support to the early stage startups. Today, we have a very interesting panel of founders building sustainability, or you can say like ventures in a sustainability space. We have Satish from Updapt. They are basically building a SaaS platform for ESG monitoring, compliance, and analytics. We have a Bhagyashree from TDC. They are building uh, plastic credit and the carbon credit platform. And we have a Bhaktha from Chara Technologies. They are building magnet-free motors, right? So thanks, a warm welcome to all of you. We'll start this discussion. So we are around what, sir, 45 minutes now? Okay. So we'll take initially around 25 minutes where I'm requesting all three founders to talk about, they can take like 7 to 8 minutes each and talk about their journey and the product and solution they are building. And then we'll move towards like some question from our side. And also at the end, we'll take few questions from the audience. Yeah, thanks. We'll start with Satish.
I hope I'm audible. Yeah, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Satish Ramchandani. I'm one of the co-founders at Updapt. So what do we do and what are the real problem statements, we are solving for the market? These are some of the elements I'll touch upon. So we started the firm in 2019. That was when the legal entity got registered just a year before COVID. And so we have, four co-founders and we come from some related backgrounds of sustainability, ESG, corporate finance, governance, consulting. And there were some of the gaps which we saw in the market, right? So there are 3, 4 problem statements fundamentally which we saw in the market and hence build the solution which I'm going to speak about. So number one is, the huge ESG data gap. We all know, we've been hearing about that, though obviously gradually the problem is getting solved. The data around ESG performances of the businesses itself, right, spread across various operations, across various verticals, that was one of the significant gap we saw where businesses were spending a lot of time on the administrative aspects rather than designing or running their strategy around decarbonization of their business operations. Second was the entire process of GST accounting, the carbon footprint accounting itself involved a lot of man hours, involved a lot of hiring of consulting, paying them huge fees. So that was one of the area we thought can be digitized. Third is, most of the time spending of the businesses spending on the administrative aspects, as I said, rather than managing the requirements of various stakeholders over time we have seen, right? It's beyond regulatory reporting. It's investors are seeking these performances, board, lenders, rating agencies. And lastly, the entire piece of, how do you really become net zero efficiently, effectively, and that was the thought, right? And in terms of we thought that how do we really build solutions, which will make the entire process more efficient and effective for businesses, right? So what we have built is a SaaS tool which will help medium to large businesses to digitize the entire ESG life cycle. What I really mean from here is right from managing the data digitally to carbon footprint accounting, recording the data in aligned to global standards. The way you have accounting standards, you have sustainability standards like India has BRSR, and then there are global standards like GRI, SASB, TCFD, and then a lot of deep analytics, giving insights to businesses in terms of their performances and how do they really enhance it, track targets versus actuals. So these are the key features which we've built. And over time, obviously, we have sharpened the product. We have also built peer benchmarking, forecasting ability in terms of predictive analysis, helping businesses to gauge where they are going to be on their emissions, right, basis the business operations. And as part of constant investment in our product initiatives, as we all know, or in case some of you guys who are following or not following, 80% of the emissions is scope 3, right, which is outside the direct control of organization, which is the value chain partners, right? So we've built a value chain partner assessment where you can digitize the ESG data management and monitoring and other elements of your supply chain partners or your other value chain partner, which could be dealers and distributors. So that's what we have essentially built. From a market standpoint, there are 30 countries who have made, which have made the ESG reporting and disclosures mandatory in nature, India being one of them. It's mandatory for 1,000 listed companies. And we'll expect that, it's going to be mandatory for all the listed companies. And similarly, as I said, 30 countries have made, reporting disclosures mandatory in nature. Last 3 months itself, we have seen 2, 3 countries who have made it mandatory, whether it's Prague or, Singapore and a couple of other countries. So we are seeing that, with every passing quarter. So again, just to, go a little bit more macro on this. So as we all know, many countries have signed up for the net zero. India is 2070. A lot of countries have signed up for 2050, right? So there's a larger political sign off. There's a larger leadership sign off at, business enterprises level. Most of them documented, committed, right? COP28 is going out there in UAE, commitments being made out there. So it's the promises and the commitments at the highest level, right? And then it eventually drills down to each of the countries to frame their respective policies the way India has framed up from a reporting standpoint. Similarly, RBI is coming with their own guidelines around, green financing and green deposits, and similarly in other countries. And then you go to industrial bodies again, or industry associations or respective industry regulators. They are framing their own guidelines again. And then specifically each of the companies, right? So if you look at any business, they would typically interact with the regulator, the lender, rating agencies, and a whole lot of other players. So all of these guys are seeking ESG performances. So it's beyond regulatory reporting. Though, as I said, 30 countries have made reporting mandatory in nature, but it's beyond regulatory reporting now. It's gradually having a direct balance sheet and a P&L impact. So if you look at a large company which scores less on ESG, the negotiation power of a CFO talking to a rating agency to upgrade itself from a AA to AA plus goes down. Similarly, talking to an investor to raise funds, the ability to raise funds, or ability to negotiate some terms, again, the negotiation power goes down. So these are some of the elements I was touching upon, that how ESG performance metrics is getting mainstream, right? Obviously, it's a journey, it's going to take time. But I think the speed is quite fast, I would say. Obviously, there are a lot of capital investments and other commitments which are needed, to transition to a green energy and a lot of other activities. But yeah, I think, so here again, coming back to what we have built, data is obviously needed for whatever you run at a personal level, at a professional level, even across the functions of any businesses, you need data, right? So that's the gap, which our solution fills. And so we're part of Accenture Ventures now. As I said, 5-year-old, we are 80-member team, and we form subsidiaries in UAE and UK now. We have about 80 clients, medium to large size clients, listed, unlisted companies, manufacturing services companies, medium to large size companies. So yeah, I think it's across the spectrum.
Thanks, Satish.
Thanks.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I am Bhagyashree Bhansali Jain. I'm the founder and CEO of the disposal company. So before I start with the business model or the business, let me just put two things into perspective for all of you. As of 2023, globally, we are producing 2.12 billion tons of plastic waste annually. And by 2050, this number is going to rise up to 3.14 billion. Okay, so this is the magnum of plastic waste that we are going to be dealing with and are already dealing with. The second thing is from a more personal note. My mother is a cancer survivor. And while her treatment was going on, the doctors told us that one of the factors that could have, caused this was microplastics, which is present, all around us. And unfortunately, it's there in our diets today. And this is something that, our parents have passed on, unfortunately, in their genes to us. And we are, most probably going to pass on. In fact, the water, if you are drinking from this, most probably if this has been around for a long while, there are microplastics here. Now that you have some context, So the disposal company started off as a plastic neutrality platform. We started providing solutions to brand with first raising consciousness that there is a polluters pay principle and that exists for a reason. That if you are polluting the environment, you need to take care of offsetting and also reducing your footprint. Now, how we provided the solution is once we talked to brands, we raised this consciousness, we also had to give them a solution on how to go about it. So we started with footprinting. So we started doing plastic footprinting for brands where we help them understand two important metrics. One, the types of plastic that you're putting out in the environment. Second, the quantities of plastic you're putting out based on your actual real sales numbers or, your operations. Now, the type of plastic is very crucial here because a lot of plastic that goes out in the environment is majorly two categories, high value and low value plastic waste. High value plastic waste, something like PET. So again, coming back to this bottle here, this is a high value plastic waste. Why is it high value? Because in the entire supply chain of waste management, there's a very real chance that once you throw it out and it ends up in a landfill, a rack picker or a waste aggregator will scavenge this bottle. Because there is a recycler out there for whom recycling this bottle makes sense. PET today is recycled into a lot of it is turned into, cloth, which is polystyrene that your H&Ms and Zara market as, sustainable clothing. But now let's take this plastic. This covering here is LDPE, low density polystyrene. Okay. And then there are similar when you eat chips packets or a lot of FMCG that you consume comes into MLP, multi-layer packaging. All these plastics are low value plastic waste. They are low value because one, there are not enough recyclers who would recycle them. Or if there are recyclers, the value and the business element of the business reasoning for them to recycle, the motivation is really low. And for the same reason, the rack picker would most definitely not pick it. So if you end up at a landfill, and I would highly recommend that you go to a landfill or check out an ocean bound, plastic waste stream, you might not find the high value plastic waste, but you most definitely will find this low value plastic waste, which is also the generator of GHG emissions that, Satish talked about. Now, this low value plastic waste is what the disposal company set out to work on. And we wanted to democratize the uptake of plastic waste management for companies. So we created an ecosystem where one, a brand does their plastic footprinting. And once they know what their exact footprint is in numeric and qualitative terms, that same type of plastic is again in the post-consumer format picked up from a landfill. It is recovered. And it is recovered by rack pickers and waste aggregators. So from an Indian context, rack pickers and waste aggregators are the folks who actually pull out this waste. Now, we've not disrupted that ecosystem. We've actually enabled and curated an additional stream of income for these rack pickers and waste aggregators. The same ecosystem exists in a lot of developing countries. So it's very important that they are further enabled. One, via additional incomes. Secondly, via better working conditions, which means providing them the right gear, providing them the timely health checkups because they work in such conditions. And thirdly, access to more finance, which they can invest towards better transportation systems like EVs. So again, that's something that the disposal company does. We help them with these finances. Now, once a rack picker collects this plastic waste, it is then sent to our partner recyclers. So we ourselves have a couple of recycling units around the country. Plus, we've partnered with other recyclers who initially started off as small recyclers who had 1 or 2 units. But one, we made them compliant with the right regulatory systems in our country. And that which is important because let's say if you're a recycler and you're recycling plastic waste, you still can't be, having high GHG emissions. You still have to treat the wastewater right. So we made sure that all the compliances are in place, and then we onboard a recycler and we provide them with the raw material which they can use and recycle and convert it into, so we work on mechanical recycling, so they can convert it into pellets, which are very similar to virgin plastic pellets, but they are recycled pellets. So this closes the loop on a particular plastic item that ends up in a landfill and is now converted into a pellet and can be used as a raw material for a new product. So this entire value chain or the loop is closed by the disposal company as part of our plastic neutrality projects that we undertake. Now, in this process, we've also integrated technology in terms of blockchain. so that there is complete transparency in the entire ecosystem. Right from when the plastic is picked up, it is geotagged. The rack pickers and waste aggregators have been enabled with devices to actually geotag it, and then the entire supply chain where there are bills when it's transferred from point A to point B. And once the recycler has converted into pellets, they are also geotagged. And once this pellet has been sold to a final producer, like for a furniture manufacturer or a shoe sole manufacturer or a photo frame manufacturer, and interestingly, in tier 3, tier 4 cities of India, jewelry manufacturers who are using these pellets today, this is also mapped, and this entire data is made available, one, to the organization investing in this project, second, to Central Pollution Control Board and the local pollution control boards, who can access this data and keep a tab on where this waste is ending up, and just to make sure that this does not end up as waste. So this is what our plastic neutrality projects entail. But over the course of last 3 years, we started in 2020, October 2020, and over the course of last 3 years, we've now evolved to become a sustainability as a solutions platform. Fortunately, our brand partners have actually come to trust us as their sustainability consultants as well. So we also offer them solutions like GHG assessment, and also we work with them in curating better products. So I again take the same example. I'm so sorry for the lack of others. So let's say here's a plastic bottle, right? Now, here are multiple components in this bottle. There is this transparent bottle that you see. There's a label material, there's a cap, and there's a ring around it. Now, if I were to design this product for today, and from a life cycle assessment perspective, these are 3 different types of plastics. If we are able to, there are 3 different plastic recycling processes for them. They will have to most probably be transported to 3 different, places, geographical places, which in turn will have its own GHG emissions. So we actually help our partner brands design their products better so that there is a life cycle assessment on how this would, finally either end up in a different product, or it would decompose in the best case scenario. And it would not generate as much GHG emission as this unfortunate product does. So that's the journey of the disposal company. And today we are working across India, Singapore, the UK, and Qatar. We are helping brands across the world with their sustainability solution, their sustainability initiatives. And last year we were invited as part of the Commonwealth Games by the Birmingham government to actually come set up a unit and help build a local ecosystem for plastic waste recycling. So thank you.
Thanks, Bhagyashree.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thanks for having me here. IIMA is always a special place for me and for Chara, because I always like to say that CIE, based out of IIMA, is the first institutional investor that invested in Chara. We do some crazy things. A lot of people don't even understand or don't care. And so we're always ever thankful. And of course, I could not come for 2 years because you guys invested in us during COVID. So it took 2 years to come here and actually see the people. Vipul is part of CIE and a few others. Anyway, thanks for that. So my name is Bhaktha. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chara Technologies. So the large background context is that, as you guys all know, that there's a large energy transition happening in this world. We are moving away from hydrocarbons to electrons for our source of energy, storage, consumption, and which is all good, hopefully, for our planet. But when this transition happens, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of problems. One of them is the motor, the future engine. The motors today that are used are broadly into 2 classes: induction motors, wherever fans, compressors. They're about 60 to 70% efficient. That means a third of the energy we put in is wasted as heat. It's clearly not sustainable economically or environmentally. Just like we moved away from incandescent lamps to LED lamps, there is a huge opportunity in motors. And the opportunity is bigger in motors because 60% of the electrical energy we produce on this planet is consumed by motors. I think lighting is around 8%. So even if you move the efficiency of the motors by a few percent, it's a huge impact on the ecosystem. And as we'd like to say, it's a huge business opportunity. There are efficient motors today, they're called BLDC and PMSM motors, primarily used in electric vehicles today. From the smallest e-bike to Yulu to Aether to Nexon to Tesla, the whole spectrum has a common motor architecture. So they use this NdFeB magnets, neodymium ferrous boron magnets. These magnets have rare earths. I'm assuming all of you guys know rare earths. If you don't know, please go Google them. It's critical for our future. They're used in motors, batteries, electronics, defense equipment. They are the 17 elements which have a common sounding name: neodymium, dysprosium. They're lanthanides on the bottom of the periodic table. They're weird that they have they have their own row in the periodic table. They're critical, and there are a few problems with rare earths. One is that they're expensive. They are difficult to mine on earth, environmentally and economically. I can go into details. There are cancer villages in China where it's produced. They also have some temperature issues. Last but not the least, our friendly neighbor has 90% control over the supply chain, which is not good for price variations, supply chain issues, and of course, geopolitics. So after this long introduction, so what we do at Chara is we are reinventing motors. I think the word motors came from motion, I think. So we named our company Chara. Chara stands for motion in Sanskrit, like Charaka, Chara, Chara, Jagannatha, like that. So what we are here to do is we want to reinvent motors. We are building motors and controllers without the use of rare earths for many applications. EV is our initial target, industrial applications, wherever motors are used today. We started on our journey about 4 years ago when the COVID started. It has been a long journey of doing deep tech research. So what we are doing is being attempted by about half a dozen companies all around the world, the usual places: North America, Israel, Europe, and the race is on to build the rare earth free motor, because everybody, if you Google it, Tesla, BMW, ZF, Male, everybody has announced rare earth free powertrains. We also believe that China is a short-term problem. The environmental impact of mining and extracting is just not sustainable. The carbon footprint is all over the place. So that's what we do at Chara. We now have products which we are actively trying to sell. That's pretty much what I wanted to tell you guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for your delighted to be here.
No, you want to use this?
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm no expert in entrepreneurship, but in the last 4 or 5 years, as part of some of the things that I'm doing, I have had conversations with entrepreneurs, particularly in the sustainability space. So, you know, one of the questions that I thought might cut across all three of you, because you're into this business, is that so some of the conversations I had with entrepreneurs, particularly in this space, one of the things that is unique to them is that there is a gap between how, like, for example, when you want to raise capital for your business, right? There's a gap between how conventional financing models work and the way, the enterprises in this kind of space work. So one of the major issues is, how to convince conventional financial institutions to fund you to raise capital, right? So I just wanted to see if any of you have, reached that stage where you experience this, and if there is how do you address these issues, and what kind of things that you can think of that maybe regulatory structures can bring in, so that's one question I thought would be interesting to understand from all three of you.
maybe I'll take an example when we didn't have any customer and we got the first customer, right? I mean, so I hope it's the same analogy that how do you really convince that guy, to buy a product which no one has bought, right? So our first customer who started using or rather bought the product was Cipla. It's a large pharmaceutical company, right? And here we are sitting with the CSO and, with zero clients or nothing to prove upon, right? So I think a couple of things I think which really worked in favor of us, right? Beyond the luck, I mean, or whatever you may say, God's grace. But I think from a pitching standpoint, there are 3, 4 key elements. One is I think convincing them about the domain knowledge that you come with. Obviously, your related backgrounds or the work which you have done in past, or in case you have done limited work in past but you have a strong team. I think that really matters. Second, I think the most important element is the conviction you bring on the table. I think that's extremely important, right? Because obviously someone is going to form an opinion, form a judgment around the convincing ability you bring on the table, right? Obviously he or she is going to put a bet on you. You need to be again lucky to come across such a guy. I think that's important. And third is, I think really assessing that what the guy needs, right? If he needs a tool which is very agile and build something which I like, and that's what we did with Cipla. We really built something what they wanted, and while we were building for them, we parallelly standardized to a SaaS product by understanding how a large complex business really works. I think so. That's again a very important element. And fourth, that's personally I really drive across my team also. It's very important that you have a lot of authenticity in the conversation. I think it's important that the other guy should like you, because if he doesn't like you, if he doesn't trust you, even if you have a good product, I think it's difficult to really crack a deal or really have personal or professional relationship. I think so that fourth element to me is extremely important. Even now that we have 80 clients, if the client doesn't like you, he even if he likes the product, he'll have a similar product, maybe another guy sitting, but if he doesn't like you, he's not going to work with you. I think the authenticity really matters. I think these are some of the 3, 4 components. I think from a client acquisition, I know you had an investor angle, but I guess I'll almost speak similar language with the investor, obviously depending upon the pulse which I sense from them.
I completely agree with Satish on all those points. And also, I'm very grateful for the sympathy where Professor, Rama's question actually came from. But see, here's where I differ. While we are sustainability enablers, there is a difference between CSR and sustainability. We are no more providing, sustainability is no more a fad. It is no more a charitable thing that, anybody is doing. So, if you are a sustainable organization, or if you're actually taking up sustainability initiatives as an organization, you are not doing good to anybody else, but first to yourselves. And I think over time, and especially where I see from the last 3 years where we come from, yes, initially the conversations were very difficult, both with the clients and with investors. With clients, like Satish said, right? We were actually trying to convince. In our case, we started in October 2020. Our first sale happened in July 2021, where we were able to first turn the client and actually make them understand our solutions and agree to buy it, put in real money into the solution. But we have come a long way from that. Today, anybody, be an entrepreneur purchasing our services, or any company, or being an investor investing in us, they understand that this is a real business solution or a business investment that they are making. If you are a sustainable organization today, let's say you work with us, you work with Updapt, or you work with Chara, the money that you're putting in is so that you can reduce a lot of costs going in future. So any business that takes up the sustainability initiative, let's say goes carbon neutral, goes plastic neutral, you are making your operations more efficient. You are, by creating a decarbonization plan, you are actually employing your resources in the right direction and cutting down emissions, which can, one, incur very real environmental fines to you, or in another case, like these costs are only going to go up. By switching to LED bulb, you are saving electricity and you're saving costs. These are real world implications in financial terms. So any investor with even a little bit of vision knows that sustainability is the real direction to move forward. How, like earlier Satish was actually telling me how the whole financial, models have changed, or how the structures have changed. Let's say, traditionally in India, for example, a lot of people, they try to save money with weird schemes from GST. Today you can't run away from it. Okay, and it is, and even if you're paying any sort of tax, be it GST or any tax, it is for your own development. It comes back to you. Similarly, it's with sustainability. Today you're investing in understanding your impacts, that's there so that you can reduce it. And coming back to your question, the conversations have changed drastically. The investors, so let's say, for example, in our case, not let's say monetary, but there has been a strategic investment by a lot of D2C investors. So they have partnered with us because we can help make their entire D2C portfolio sustainable. So those sort of partnerships, and one of the SDGs is partnerships for goods. So I think, yeah, today it's a great scenario. And in fact, like CIICO and Accenture is now coming up with their second cohort. So I think, like, that's just I mean, that shows, like, where we are going.
So Satish, you said you have to make investors like you. Very hard for me, old bald guy. It's very hard for me to make anybody like us. But anyway, to answer Professor's question, so when we try to pitch to investors in this deep tech, sustainability, um, into the green stuff, we usually pray. That's the only thing. We talk to a lot of people and hope that somebody, it's very hard. You said you had your revenue 1 year. We still don't have revenue. It takes a long time. No, we have some customers, but takes a long time. Takes about typically 4 or 5 years to any meaningful revenue. Various ways of defining revenue, but any meaningful revenue. So it is hard. I think that the trick we used, completely non-technical, and this is what I've learned from a lot of entrepreneurs, is that we have to know the art of storytelling. We have to weave a story. It has to have finance and customer, product, and all the usual stuff. I've seen a lot of people, the most celebrated entrepreneurs in India. I've seen them talk VSS of Paytm, uh, Kunal Shah of Cred. You should listen to them. They're not even talking about finance when they in the pitch. They're talking about a story. I think that is what something, if I ever get a chance to go back in time and study in school, in undergrad, I think the course you have to take is not math and science, drama. And really, I'm not joking. We have to learn, we have to convey what is in our mind. We might be thinking, we spoke to, we stopped keeping count after 75 investors, the spreadsheet. It stopped at 70 because it became too frustrating for us. But eventually we found the money, and now there is more support for us. But before that, I want to say a couple of things. One is that the story we told is that there are large transitions that happen every decade. I have seen 3 transitions. One is in the 90s, the information revolution. The second one, which was peculiar to India, which is where I started the company, EasyTap, and we recently exited, is what is called as the digitization of the Indian economy. And that's where EasyTap, Paytm, PhonePe, it's all side effects of the digitization. Now, the biggest transition the world will ever see is the energy transition. I think it will beat the information revolution. The huge opportunities, huge problems to be solved. And that is the opportunity we are presenting to the investor. I know we are solving a small piece of the much larger puzzle that will happen. And I think that is what we have to look at transitions, and we have to convey that story. When we pitched, we didn't have any, graphs which were going high exponentially and all that. We didn't even know what we were doing. A lot of times, deep tech, sustainability is like that. And that's the insights we have. But now our pitching has changed. After 2 rounds of funding, we are more into regular, growths and cost of unit economics and all that. I think the The last thing I have to say is we also have to be lucky a little bit because externalities is something we can't control. So we always hope for externalities around us which will help us. And I was always, I think I told somebody, the only reason we exist today is apart from climate is, another country, because another country. So we always have to look for those little luck factors also.
I missed out, and this is a very important point. Building a sustainability solution is not enough. Like, we also need, while great stuff, everybody's helping the environment, and yes, but we need to have a sustainable business model as well. And I say this as an entrepreneur in this industry and also as a Marwadi. Your business needs to make money at the end of the day, and that's the only way to generate money in the long run.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we have only 5 minutes left on time. I have a lot of follow-up questions and many questions, but I think I should either leave to people or the audience to, so interact with the speakers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Hi, I'm Siddharth. I'm a student here. My question was to Bhagyashree, because I've been looking at disposal companies' website and other important things. One curious thing that I wanted your thoughts on was that in case a company that you're collaborating with is doing sustainability efforts, say for example you have a collaboration with Tag Z, who essentially recycle the amount of plastic that they actually sell in terms of the potato chips. Should that be informed to the customers? I understand that can help the brand, but will that make customers more careless about their waste management? Because it is already because that plastic wrapper is essentially already cycled by the firm. Will I, as a consumer, be more careless about that, about the sustainability of that plastic wrapper? What do you think about it?
Okay, so there are two parts to your question. First of all, who recycles this? Okay, so the disposal company takes responsibility of recycling an equivalent amount of the same type of plastic that this brand puts out in the environment. We have multiple recyclers across the country. We aggregate and we run our own units as well. So the same amount and same type of plastic is recovered from either a landfill or a waterbound or ocean-bound plastic stream. And then we recycle that and convert it into granules, which then becomes raw material for other industries. The second part of your question. So see, we make a very due effort that the customers are informed that this company is plastic neutral. Okay, which means that the consumer knows that yes, what efforts this company is taking, towards managing their waste stream. Having said that, we work across communication channels like social media. In fact, it's mentioned on the packaging itself, what happens with plastic waste. But in no way is this communication meant for consumers to become careless. See, there is no alternative to conscious consumerism. While yes, the brand is taking care of the footprint, but you, while buying, should, at least, let's say when you are, skimming through an aisle and seeing, what all different products are available. In this case, let's say chips. So you see 4 different alternatives, and one of them is a plastic neutral brand like Tags, or there are other brands who do not talk about it in any format. I'm not just saying you need to make an effort as a consumer to find out if your favorite brand is doing something or not. Yes, I would recommend that make sure that the brand that you are interacting with is at least conscious, and conscious in the ways that it aligns with your values. So not just saying that they have to be plastic neutral, but maybe another brand could be doing a lot about GHG assessments. They could be managing their carbon footprint, but they have to have a sustainability value. But at the end of the day, it comes down to conscious consumerism. I would still recommend, as much as you can, you need to cut down, on your consumption, or as much as you can, just consume better.
So I'll just give you a background, because one of the student projects that we had worked on here, essentially in that when we inform the consumer that the food waste is getting recycled, the amount of food that is getting wasted actually increases. That is what we observe in a couple of our student projects. So in this,
How does the amount of food gets more?
because the
wasted?
food waste is already getting recycled, I'm less guilty about wasting that amount of food. So that is why I was just extrapolating the same insight from this and trying to understand how does it work when it is some other plastic waste.
So what you are saying is absolutely true. And, this is something that, we have seen over and over again. This is a very real case study. See, so I'll give you another example. So there's a brand called Juicy Chemistry that we work with. Okay. Now, Juicy Chemistry is a plastic positive brand. They actually recover 10% more than their annual footprint than what they recycle. But if you go on their website and make a purchase, at the checkout, there's an option where the consumer is asked to pay an additional amount. It's an option, but they're asked to pay an additional amount to offset more plastic footprint. Now, this is our product that we create. It's called TDC offsets. Now, we always tell the brand the idea with creating this additional tax, so to say, is not that that you add an extra amount or the brand just recovers that amount from the consumer. The idea is that even at the last checkout point, the consumer is reminded that plastic neutrality or plastic waste management is something that is ingrained in this brand's value, and to reinforce it to the consumer that, hey, just there is a term called plastic neutrality, just think about it. So I see the most that we as enablers or the brands that we work with can do is that we can again and again reinforce the sustainability value system that we believe in. But at the end of the day, the real change in the world is only going to come from our own consumerism, our own conscious consumerism.
Thank you so much.
Just a follow-up, because this is a question which we keep engaging with students all the time, is are you able to, going beyond voluntary price rise, what is the willingness to pay for sustainability? Is it possible? Has it ever happened that the plastic neutral clients, one of yours, are actually charging a higher price, factoring in the cost of externality and then passing it on to whoever wants to consume?
So yes, there are multiple cases that we've seen. One is, so when we do plastic footprinting, one of the parts, so plastic footprinting also involves the costing, right? There's a per kg additional cost that the brand is now going to bear. So we actually create a visual for them to see how much cost factor, like the rise cost factor, is going to be there on the product. And generally, it's less than a rupee for a single unit of product. The idea behind that
Can
is,
they pass that through 1 rupee? Do they pass?
they can, but fortunately, we have not yet seen that happen. The reason behind that is because, see, India is a very competitive market. And with the constant rise of the number of brands that we are seeing, the price war is, only increasing. And fortunately, the consciousness is also increasing. The consciousness can either come from the founder or it comes from the investor, from a compliance perspective. And because of the price war that we have in India, they generally do not increase the price. But yes, with tools like our API, which I just talked about, they do, add that and ask a voluntary, tax that if you can, please pay for it.
And if I can just add here, I mean, see, businesses exist for profit, and rightly so, right? We also a profit-making entity. And consumers, they will not pay an additional price if they don't see value for money, right? Social good is one element. If social good is that they can anyways do through their social causes they want to run, right? I mean, whichever donations they are making, this could be around that itself, right? So I think what's important is, to really decarbonize the economy, right? It's going to be a combination of technology, policies, and third is the behavioral change. When I say behavioral change, it's not necessarily of the consumer. It's also by the business enterprises, how they really run their operations, right? So why would a consumer pay more, right, just to do social good? The intent may be there to do a social good. He or may choose to run a project, right, for hunger or poverty or whatever financial literacy they want to run. I think the larger element is, we'll gradually see some of the government policies changing. A, B, you will see the capital for some of the processes getting more expensive if they are not environment friendly, and the capital needed for environment friendly processes will get cheaper. So there has to be a P&L impact. I mean, I'll be very honest, it's a capitalist mindset, but that's how it's going to run. For example, diesel was half the price of petrol about few years back. Now it's almost the same. Electric vehicles are maybe 30–40% expensive. The moment electric vehicles are the same price as petrol or 10% less, I think we all are going to buy electric vehicles. And there the government intervention, the policies are going to make a difference, right? Tomorrow, what if petrol cars, if they have more excise duty, hypothetically, right? Possible.
Right. Yeah.
In whichever way, whether it's the, yeah, I mean, but that's the EV. I mean, that's another dimension, the battery of the EVs. I mean, but yeah.
So thanks so much for the very interesting panel conversation. I would like to follow up on what you mentioned about the responsible consumerism. And I totally hear you about reminding individual consumers about the responsibility they have, correct? But I just wonder if at the end of the day, it's actually the responsible companies like yours reminding consumers who are already responsible in a sense by being your clients, that to remind them that they should be more conscious. Could it be that it actually has a perverse adverse effect on them? Because could it be that they then over time shift over to the irresponsible companies, because those irresponsible companies don't keep reminding the consumers, you should feel bad about it? You see what I mean? Like, in a sense, just to give you an example, if I eat meat and I go to a restaurant, and yes, we all know we should decrease our consumption of meat to fight climate change. But if, once in a while I feel like, let's have a nice piece of chicken, I should not say beef here, I realize that, but a nice piece of chicken. And then in the restaurant, I order a happy chicken, well, a chicken that used to be happy while it was alive. And then the server tells me, you should really cut down on chicken. Maybe at the end of the day, I no longer go to that restaurant because I don't know you see what I mean? So I just wonder, is there a potential perverse effect there?
See, definitely, what you're saying does make sense, okay? And in an ideal world, we would, want that all the communication, out there, and, all the good efforts that PETA has been making has gotten through to everyone around the world. And, we've cut down our consumption. Or, like, just not about meat, but in general, like, these, the purchasing habits that we engage in. See, realistically speaking, it does not matter. People do not change their habits unless it really comes from within, and something within you changes, and there's a very real impact directly onto your lives. And that's the only reason why we are making these efforts, to actually just tell people that, hey, this is probably a more sustainable choice, or probably a little better than what you're currently doing. Is one, for, of course, the consumers to understand the impact, but also to set certain industry standards that, people at least start saying that, hey, this is the bare minimum that you can do because all the other brands are doing this. Okay. And, or maybe, like, if your two competitors are doing this, maybe you are my favorite brand. Hey, you too can, do this, at least do these bare minimum. So the idea is that by setting small standards, we can at least get to a point where these businesses are, whatever, activity they undertake, they are very careful about it. And for that to happen, and for it to be married, with the consumer's consciousness, I think that's the best that we can hope for our planet. But I don't think, like, there is so if, like, we stop doing this, if we stop this communication, where do you see the world going? If we stop telling people that at least that one company is doing a little better, and, you know, let's all just keep engaging in the habits that we have for the last, you know, decade or century, then where do you see the world going? So it's really like, you know, I mean, we are battling with this issue. That's the truth of it. And whatever best we can do, I think all of us are trying.
I think if I bring the similar dimension, if we believe meat contributes significantly to climate risk, just imagine if chicken is 3 times more expensive than what it is now, you'll automatically see the consumption going down. And that can also be an economic thought process.
Or maybe the faux meat becomes like, you know, a better alternative for you over time. Maybe the company.
And coming back, given it's innovative startups, so you have startups around mock meats, right? Again, yeah.
Maybe your server should not tell you that, hey, cut down your consumption. Maybe they could actually offer you a better alternative that, hey, have this taste, you know, it tastes better, it's good for the environment. So that, you know, yeah.
Okay. Well, so, you know, you may be aware of this extended producer responsibility in plastic waste, right? And we have that that kind of regulation across different waste streams, including e-waste, you know. One of the sort of logics behind EPR is that, you know, you can't really expect the consumers to have that sort of consciousness and make those decisions that will, you know, actually push the market towards more sustainable products and all that. So they said that it's easier to regulate the producers, right? So the logic behind introducing extended producer responsibility is that you can't really, you know, also if you look at consumer side, there's also a lot of information asymmetries, right? You may be very conscious about buying a, you know, green product, but there's sort of costs involved for a consumer to figure out, you know, where to get, even if you're willing to pay, right? There's so many problems associated with, you know, identifying a green product that is consistent with your preferences, right? And buying it. So that is where you know, you said policies coming in, you know, for example, in plastic waste, when I was talking with one of the entrepreneurs, one of the things he was saying is that beyond the voluntary market that could, you know, make these kinds of firms successful, they also need regulation. For example, if you make it mandatory for companies to use certain proportion of their inputs from recycled plastic, right? So, I mean, similar to extended producer responsibility, right? There are mandatory government instruments, right? So right now the debate is to what extent markets can, you know, bring these kind of changes through voluntary actions versus some sort of a more coercive, you know, regulations from the government, right? So yeah, with that note, I think we have run out of time. And the kind of conversations we had is also reflective of the fact that, you know, plastic is what is, you know, really has more attention, that reflects in your observation that, you know, the things have really improved from investors' side when it comes to plastic, and not so much with some of the other technologies that are less, you know, less visible and attracts the attention of people. So thank you very much. It's a very, I mean, I would look forward to having more conversations with you outside of this, because each of them like speaks to something like really important right now, right, in sustainability space, each of your enterprises. So thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to, you know, be on this panel. Yeah. You had to say anything?
So all three are our portfolio company, and now we also have a Chara as a case registered in IIMA. Professor Joshi, Jacob is here. So if anyone want to know more about how on the capital side of the deep tech functional perspective, I think you can also refer that particular case. And as a CI, we are supporting more enterprise in the similar space. We have a basically plan to build almost 30 to 40 portfolio company in next 1 and 2 years. So happy to engage if anyone to know more about like our startups in this particular space. Thank you.